All right, hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. This is an educational channel, and we are embarking on a new direction today. We've done about 584 days on the reciprocal system of theory from Dewey B. Larson. This channel generally focuses on theories of everything, cosmologies, all-encompassing theories, grounding theories, theories that can help you with your paradigm shifting, your awakening to 5D consciousness, your formation of a holistic worldview. We're now moving into a unit where we're going to be kind of looking at spirituality east and west, and maybe trying to figure out how to kind of shore up some of the West's let's just say tampering with some of their holy books, and leaving some voids in their scriptures. So, for example, most Christians are not aware that reincarnation, the doctrine of reincarnation, used to be part of the Bible, but the Pope and all his bishops met in 553 A.D. and expunged that part of the Bible out of it. So now you hear a lot of evangelicals and other Christians, mocking reincarnation like it is some kind of either blasphemy, or in some cases even like satanic, or at least heathenish and uncivilized and primitive, and so it's just kind of that, and the same is true to a certain extent of the law of karma. You hear Christians talking about Ephesians 6:11, put on the armor of God. Well, that's the same as karma. As you sow, so shall you reap. If you don't, if you don't create the karma, then you won't be harmed. It's not, necessarily coming from God the Father. It's coming from the, just the idea that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. These are the laws. You don't necessarily have to have a God that is, interfering in everybody's affairs. Every activity is being interfered with by God. You could have a different kind of God that is, I set the laws in motion, and the laws will, create justice. And now there are some complications, which maybe occur because of the law of reincarnation. But anyway, that's what and what I'm saying, there probably are people who would disagree, and I'll certainly be open to, I'm not set in stone about all this. But what we're going to try to do to start with is we're going to take a look at this book here by an American Buddhist named Daniel Ingram. And Mr. Ingram has written what I'm not a widely read Buddhist or anything, but this is the best and most comprehensive book that I've read on Buddhism. It's called Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha, and this is volume I don't know if this is the most recent volume. It came out in 2018, and he tacked on another couple hundred pages, so I'm not sure that I've read all of this. I've read a fairly recent edition, but I'm not sure. But we're going to just get into it and see. Now, what Ingram does in this book is he spent many retreats over in Burma, Malaysia, and, at Buddhist centers, and has learned from some of the greats, along with, doing a lot of reading. And he's really focused on putting together the maps of consciousness. When you are doing meditation, particularly regardless of whether it's concentration or insight meditation, you are moving your consciousness through stages, I guess what they call jhanas, and there are maps for these things. It's not just random. It's not just individual, experience. All people go through the same stages, and many of these Buddhist monks have been mapping these things out for thousands of years, and so these are things that are useful to use regardless of the tradition that you come from. And so Ingram, I think, does a great job of trying to lay this stuff out. And then once we get done with Ingram's book, we're going to go into the Gospels and other parts of the Bible, and kind of try to nitpick and pick out the parts there that are consistent and that are useful, and also then pick apart. We're going to try to use the text of the Gospels, use the text of the Bible, but at the same time use some other texts to show the true origins and what is actually transpiring here, and then try to salvage. Because I would say that, at least for myself, I believe in Christian values. I believe that the values that the modern day Christian holds are very valid and noteworthy and laudable in general. But at the same time, I don't necessarily believe that those things are things that Jesus actually taught, and I have to question his existence in general, and I have to question the motivations of the people that put those on paper. And I think there's a lot of research out there that makes it pretty obvious, the points that I'm making. And so, and I believe that is kind of a red pill for a lot of the people in the truther movement that pride themselves on, digging and doing the research and making sure that there's no psyops going on. Well, to me, the New Testament is one long psyop from the Roman government and the Caesars. And I think that can be proven. I think it has been proven. But that doesn't mean that Christian doctrine is invalid. I believe that I believe there's something to it, but that it just needs to be salvaged. It needs to be bolstered a little bit by some other ways of thinking, and I believe that it can move forward from here and continue to be a positive force in the world, while maybe eliminating some of the negative parts of it. So anyway, that will be a little bit for later. We're going to first delve in here to the preface. This is the preface to the second edition that we're going to start with here for mastering the core teachings of the Buddha. And as you listen to this, whether you're a Buddhist or not, just try to keep in mind the general doctrine. And if you think that Buddhism is some kind of religion that is primitive or evil or satanic or something else, you know, but you can maintain that judgment, but it's just kind of ignorant. I think that it's really a philosophy, and it's ultimate pragmatism. You're sitting there with yourself, and you're trying to, you know, pay attention, and you're trying to, you know, watch your consciousness. You're trying to investigate what's going on. So I don't think there's really a whole lot of mumbo jumbo there. You're just sitting there with yourself, and they're giving you some maps about what's happening to you so that it helps you to understand the various phases of consciousness that you go through. Some of these are basically very elementary. We are emotions. Everybody knows that if you get somebody, you know, you do somebody wrong, then they get angry. If you tell them something bad, then they get sad. You know, well, it's the same thing with other phases of consciousness as well. So don't look at this as being some kind of foreign religion that is, you know, based on the Buddha. The Buddha was maybe or maybe didn't exist either. It's not about the Buddha. It's about the maps, and it's about the philosophies at the what is this all about? You know, so that's, I guess, what I'm trying to get to in this new unit, is to strip away all of the BS, and let's get down to brass tacks and figure out what we're dealing with. And then when we do that, you know, we won't need, you know, I firmly, you know, believe in God, but I don't need any type of mediator to get between me and God. And maybe my conception of God is a bit different than somebody else's. I don't think that there is some kind of father who's looking after me, who's anthropomorphic. And I definitely think that the God of the Bible is a God of the Old Testament is a God with a small g. And I think that's easily proven as well, because I don't believe that God with a capital G would be jealous, zealous, would have obsessive compulsive disorder, and all possessive, and all kinds of addicted, all kinds of personality disorders that God of the Old Testament has. You know, jealous would be the first, and OCD. You know, why is God making us, you know, bend over backwards and then twirl our hips and then jump around and then kill 2 turtle doves and all of that? You know, that's God with a small g. And if you look at the Sumerian, which I, you know, can't read Sumerian, but I've trusted some translations. This is not this is not God with a capital G. God with a capital G is the God of like the first 2 chapters of Genesis at most, and then that God is replaced by a God with a small g, who is, jealous and zealous. Okay, let's start here with the preface to Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha. I started writing the small pamphlets and locally printed books that would one day become Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha somewhere in early 1997, which seems quite a long time ago at this point. A lot has changed since then about my own practice, the world of meditation, my understanding of the world of meditation, and mental development and the world in general. The rise of the internet has facilitated unprecedented cross-pollination and collaboration. I hopefully won't be interrupting too much, but that's what I'm looking for, is cross-pollination and collaboration, and in particular through meditative practice and experiential, and I just have such a huge problem with some of these Christians who will tell you that there's something wrong with meditation. That's you're just sitting there. You're trying to understand your thought process, and but there's something in the Bible that says that it's wrong or whatever. Well, where's your freaking Bible come from? That's really what is got my goat about this, is that these truthers and all of these people who are, red-pilled, and they are constantly talking about the Bible, and they're constantly citing the Bible, but they will never, ever actually ask, where did this thing come from? What is this about? At least in my upbringing, my father went to seminary school, and that turned him into a complete atheist. And so I grew up with pretty much no religion. And so when I first read the Bible, I was already red-pilled. I'd already been red-pilled for many years. And so when I'm reading the New Testament or the Old Testament, both, I'm just like reading it, and I'm just like, you expect me to believe this? There's no way I can believe this. Because I know, like, when I'm reading the Old Testament, it's like, well, I've already read this story, this Adam and Eve thing. I've read this in books that are 1,000 years older than the Bible. So obviously the Bible didn't get it. It's not an original Bible, original Old Testament scripture. They got it from somewhere else. And same with the New Testament. It's just like, well, this is an obvious psyop. This is obviously, the Romans are the people who wrote this. And then, when you read the work of Josephus, which I don't believe in him either, but whoever wrote Josephus, who is the only source that corroborates Jesus' existence, the extra biblical source that corroborates Jesus' existence, Josephus whoever wrote Josephus is the same person or group of people who wrote the Gospels, because they're running parallel to each other, and they're constant back and forth between each other. They're telling the same story in the same order in many cases. Wherever the Roman Titus, the general, or Wherever he goes is wherever Jesus goes. So anyway, okay, back to the text. The rise of the internet has facilitated unprecedented cross-pollination and collaboration, allowing obscure and isolated practitioners around the world to suddenly come together and share their experiences and ideas about practice. The effect of the Dharma has already been profound. As far as I know, Dharma is just kind of like the law of being. The effect of the Dharma has already been profound. I doubt we have seen anything but the tiny beginning of what is possible. I'd like to thank numerous people who gave me the feedback in the first edition. I'm going to skip a little bit. The first print edition that was widely available came out in 2008, yet much of it was written between 1997 and 2001, with one major update to the chapter on the model of the stages of enlightenment. However, since then, many important events have occurred, and lots of useful reader and user feedback has been provided that have made me feel that my recently released work was already in need of revision. And so the second edition came to be. Numerous sections have been considerably expanded, particularly this section on concentration, and many things have been rearranged. Now, in Ingram's estimation, there are really two separate kinds of meditation. One is concentration and one is insight. Concentration, you're trying to pay attention to your to one object, one thing, your breathing, or something like that. And with insight, you're really trying to let everything in. He will explain it 1,000 times better than I just did. Again, I'm just a student of this, and I've been meditating for 30 plus years, but I'm not that good at it. And probably because I haven't done extensive retreat work. And I've been working on the insight meditation for a long time, but have certainly not made the kind of progress that he's made. But on the other hand, I probably have a lot of other experiences that he doesn't have. So I have also added an autobiographical section at the end, and hopefully will help explain the backstory of some of what you might find in this book. People keep asking for those sorts of details, as well as getting parts of my history very wrong in the absence of that information. Hopefully these points will help clarify some for some practical value. On the other hand, some people pleaded with me to remove even the small autobiographical details that were in the first edition. I've clearly gone in the other direction with the basic underlying principle that I think we should talk and write openly about these topics, and not doing so in the previous book clearly had a hypocritical element to it and failed to convey some points that I think are useful for the practice and life, for practice and life. I have also added more map geekery. That's right down my alley, as that technical information doesn't appear in many other places that I am aware of. So I just basically let it rip, which is music to my ears. Again, these were the details that I wanted when I was coming up in Dharma. So I passed these on, assuming someone else out there will appreciate them as I did, which I do. If it is too much for you, then ignore it, as the basic practices work regardless of whether you are a map freak like I am. I would like to thank members of the Dharma Overground and its sister communities, without which much in my life and practice would simply not be nearly as good. And for them, I am very grateful. Okay, I hope you'll find something in the second edition that helps you practice and enhances your life. Okay, that is the end of the preface for the second edition. Now let's see. I think we've got a few more minutes. Let's start up here with the forward and warning. I'm having to use a different computer here, so I have a different setup, a slightly different setup, as you can probably tell, and it's hard for me to, the camera is further away and everything. Okay. When I was about 14 or 15 years old, I accidentally ran into some of the classic early meditation experiences described in the ancient texts, and my reluctant spiritual quest began. I did not realize what had happened, nor did I realize I had crossed something like a point of no return, something I would later call the arising and passing away. I had a very strange dream with bright lights. My entire body and world seemed to explode like fireworks, and afterwards I had to find something, but I had no idea what that was. So that's interesting. I think a lot of people that do get into meditation do so by that they've had random crazy experiences of consciousness where something, maybe some traumatic or almost traumatic, or in some cases, I suppose, drug experiences, or maybe endurance, or something that is really testing your limits, and you have these experiences and you can't explain them, and Western society has nothing for you. It has nothing. It won't tell you what what you need to know about what happened to you, and so a person either will kind of fold up into their shell and refuse to go there again, or they may try, if they're more experimental, then they may get attracted by something like meditation to try to figure it out. So that's apparently what happened to him at age 14 or 15. He had some kind of crazy experience that he had no idea how to figure out what was going on. So since then, I have met a large number of people who have also crossed the arising and passing away, ANP, early in their lives in various circumstances, many totally unrelated to meditative training. It turns out this is not particularly special or unusual, and I now actually think of it as part of standard human perceptual development. At the time, however, I thought very little about it, having no formal words for it, context to place it in, or understanding of what it was. It got filed into a mental folder for memories of, quote, other weird stuff I don't know what to do with. And trust me, I had a real big folder of that before, I started to systematically try to work with that stuff. Other weird stuff I don't know what to do with. A file that wouldn't make any sense for about 10 more years. I philosophized frantically for years until I finally began to realize no amount of thinking was going to solve my deeper spiritual issues and complete the cycle of practice that had already started. I had a friend named Kenneth Folk, who played bass in the Motown and soul band that employed me as a sound tech and roadie. We met during my freshman year in college and ended up being housemates in my junior year in a skanky little band house in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which is where I went to graduate school. And that's why I know about this book, because one of my friends in graduate school, he didn't go to grad school with me, but he was just one of my friends, but he knew this guy, and he turned me on to this book. He was a Buddhist. And so I thank you, Steve, but I hope you're doing well in communist Canada right now. We met during my freshman year of college at UNC Chapel Hill. He was in a similar place, caught like me in something we would later call the dark night and other names. He had crossed the arising and passing away before moving from California to North Carolina, and it had changed his life in numerous ways. He also realized logic and cognitive restructuring were not going to help us in the end. We spent a lot of time playing frisbee late at night and philosophizing, and finally began looking carefully at what other philosophers had done when they came to the same point, and noted that some of our favorites had turned to mystical practices. And I think that's kind of the crux of where we're at, I think, in terms of the Christian truthers and so on. It's time to turn to mystical practices. We reason they're not evil. We reason some sort of non-dual wisdom arising from direct experience was the only way to go. Direct experience. But acquiring that sort of wisdom seemed daunting, if not impossible, a daunting, if not impossible task. Kenneth was a bit further along in his spiritual crisis and finally had no choice but to give serious meditation a try. He quit the music business, moved back to the little agricultural desert town of Winchester in California, and lived in a rundown old mobile home his parents owned, driving pizza to save money so he could deepen his spiritual quest. He also was lucky enough to run into a guy named Bill Hamilton. On Bill's somewhat radical advice, Kenneth did a 3-month intensive insight meditation retreat, and then eventually took off to Asia for a year of intensive practice under the guidance of meditation masters in the Burmese Theravada Buddhist tradition. When he came back, the benefits of his practice appeared obvious to me, and a few years later, I began to try to follow a similar path. Okay, I believe we're out of time here. So we'll start up again tomorrow where we are, and thanks for tuning in. Have a great